everyone. This is Jim Biringer here at NHLRumors.com. The NHL trade deadline is Friday, March 7th. Please stay notified. Click the notification button. Click that little bell. Like this video. The trade deadline is here Friday. And man, oh man, there's a lot of action, a lot of rumors, a lot of things percolating on the hot irons. Look, we've seen the center market, which wasn't big to begin with. Let's be honest, because every team needs a center. Everybody wants a center. But Yanni Gourde, along with Oliver Bjorkstrand, go from Seattle back to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Well, Gourde does anyway. He was there for their back-to-back championships, 2020, 2021, along with Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, that line, that defensive line, because what we saw what Florida did, Seth Jones gets traded from Chicago to Florida. What a trade that was during a Stadium Series game. And the dominoes are starting to fall, right? Florida's getting a backup goalie. They're bringing Kaapo Kähkönen. Tampa's loading up for another run at the Cup as well in the Atlantic Division, because you know who doesn't finish in first. One of Toronto, Florida, or Tampa. The other two are going to have to face each other in the first round. So with Gourde off the board, and oh, by the way, Jake Evans is off the board from the Montreal Canadiens. He was a piece that teams wanted, along with Joel Armia, to maybe a package deal, or they could have done separate deals to get them because of their number one penalty kill unit. But Evans is staying in Montreal for 4 more years, $2.85 million AAV. Now, it's a tradable contract, can be done down the road, but he really wants to stay in Montreal, and he's a great bottom six forward, penalty kill, scoring, the whole 9 yards. So some of the top centers are already off the board. That brings us to Brock Nelson and the New York Islanders. Again, he could be a great second-line center for somebody. Winnipeg Jets, Toronto Maple Leafs, Dallas Stars, Colorado Avalanche. But we know Lou Lamoriello, and we do know that he's never going to tip his hand. We know Brock Nelson wants to stay. I spoke with Brock at, Four Nations. He wants to be an Islander for life. He understands what it means. There's a loyalty there to Lou Lamoriello. And the Islanders are out on the West Coast. And again, this is just an opinion here. There's a lot of rumors linking Palmieri and Nelson to New Jersey. And we'll get to the Devils in a minute. But, Capitals, Toronto, if those deals were really going to happen, an Eastern Conference team was going to acquire one of those players, those deals would be done already. The Islanders are in California preparing for the San Jose Sharks on Saturday. Lamoriello has a history of going out before the California trip starts a couple of days early to get his team acclimated. They're really going to fly on a plane on Friday to go back across the East Coast. To me, these guys are staying. It feels like Palmieri's staying. It feels like Nelson's staying. It feels like those guys could sign extensions, especially Nelson. If they get traded, it would be the Western Conference team, i.e. Winnipeg, maybe LA, looking for scoring as well. That's what the Islanders are cooking up. They could be cooking up something else too. Again, Lou never tips his hand, but only a couple of points out of the playoff spot and teams to jump. He knows anything can happen, especially with one of his former teams, the New Jersey Devils, on a little bit of a slide. News not all good in New Jersey. Jack Hughes out for the rest of the season, shoulder surgery. They were already looking for a center. Yanni Gourde's off the market. Jake Evans is off the market. The ripple-down effect, the domino effect of this trade market. Once these centers go, there's not many left. Scott Lawton, Braden Schen's out there. Ryan O'Reilly's out there. Casey Middlestat. But as we've documented along the way, NHL Rumors has, if you look at each one of these guys, is Casey Middlestat a 2C, probably 3C for what you're giving up? And does he fit what Sheldon Keefe's doing? And does Colorado believe he's a 2C if they're dangling him out there? But with Val Nichushkin back, they may bring him back off the board. Ryan O'Reilly, while he doesn't have any trade protection, Trotz is in no rush to move him. It would be a big package to get him. I know for talking with sources last year in regards to UC Saros at this time, they wanted Seamus Casey, Dawson Mercer, Akira Schmid in a first for Saros and Alexander Carrier. By the way, Carrier is now in Montreal. So that's the type of package that Trotz is looking for. You could go down the list. Scott Lawton's looking for a first-round pick. Are the Devils really going to get the player from inside the division? Again, these in-division trades don't really happen that often, especially to rivalry teams. And, you look at Braden Shen, reports from Darren Dreger, it's equivalent of 3 firsts, maybe 2 firsts, and a player that's equal to a first is what St. Louis, because they're in the mix too. So what do the New Jersey Devils do? Well, as we've documented, and you go back to it, the New Jersey Devils since July, even though they had a good offseason, have needed goal scoring. They've needed it. Brock Besser's name's out there, but as we've documented here on NHLrumors.com, it's a dilemma. While it's not all quiet in Vancouver, they are still taking calls on Brock Besser. He's not going to sign a 5-year deal at $8 million. Now, they could turn around tomorrow and do it, and on Friday he could do it. But he probably not. So, but they want to make the playoffs. So that's the dilemma that they're in. They want to make playoffs. They got injuries to Thatcher Demko, Quinn Hughes. Oh, by the way, they traded Carson Soucy to New York. And $3 million has come off the cap. So are they looking for a bigger move here? And, it looks to me like a team like Vancouver would want to move Elias Pettersson, but can they do it? It's crazy to think that even though Pettersson was out there, really early on with the new contract, he was available last year too. They didn't move him to Carolina because they couldn't get Marty Necas. They were going to try to move him to Carolina for Marty Necas again before the Miller to New York deal happened and before Carolina decided the Mikko Rantanen deal is going to happen. And by the way, we'll get to Mikko Rantanen in a little bit. So what does Vancouver do with these guys? And Pettersson is an option. New Jersey's been out there. Talked to some people about that. When the reports were that New Jersey was looking at JT Miller, maybe they were really looking at Elias Pettersson. They checked in. They could have just picked up the phone to see what the asking price was, but they checked in on him. But they've been checking in on Brock Besser all year. He's like the perfect addition to this team for what they need in the top 6. They acquired Brian Dumoulin. Fitz has got about $13 million in cap space to use. But the question is where do the Devils go? Again, Vancouver could be options because of what they have. And Mikko Rantanen could be an option because the Carolina Hurricanes are looking to deal him. Where would he go? And what type of the return they're looking for? Well, they're looking for the return that they gave up, which is Marty Necas and Jack Drury. New Jersey has those types of players. It would probably be Dawson Mercer. It would probably be Simone Nemec would definitely be gone in this deal at first. What would come back the other way with Rantanen? And oh, by the way, these teams trading for Rantanen want guarantees that he's signing a contract because they're not going to give that much up with him walking July 1st because he's a free agent. It would have to be a sign and trade. That's the only way a Rantanen deal is going to get done on, at the trade deadline. And maybe even if it doesn't happen at trade deadline, it happens in the summer before free agency, it's got to be a sign and trade because teams want guarantees. And no team's going to just give away prospects with potential for players on the team right now for a guy that may not stick around. It's not worth it. But Carolina should have known the type of player they were getting. They should have known that he may not sign an extension. All options are on the table. Keep them, move them, sign them. Similar to what Brock Besser is in Vancouver. Keep them, move them, sign them. There's so many dilemmas right now in teams like Dallas, Vegas. Columbus could get in the mix. Florida could get in the mix with Mikko Rantanen. Imagine Mikko Rantanen out in Vegas. You knew it could happen. And potential, Shea Theodore out there. But they acquired Riley Smith. Nice depth piece for them. They got Brandon Saad earlier. Could potentially get Mikko Rantanen again. Dallas has cap space. We know that. And we know Miro Heiskanen is done for the season, at least until early playoffs. Tyler Seguin's on LTIR. So they have the money to bring him in and sign him. It would be kind of ironic. He'd be signing, and Colorado's got to see him for 8 more seasons. And they have cap space to make things work. Florida has cap space to make work because of the Matthew Tkachuk injury. He's on LTIR. And as we reported, when it happened at Four Nations and we heard it was going to be bad, and Paul Maurice said, well, he's going to play for us this season, but he never specified regular season playoffs. He was out for the regular season. He'll be back for the playoffs. Florida's definitely loading up for a 3rd trip to the Stanley Cup final. What does LA do when they're looking for goal scoring as well? That's why Palmieri makes sense. Besser makes sense. But again, it's so tough to do these in-division trades unless you're a real seller, as we saw with like the Jake Wallman deal potentially going to Edmonton and what we see going back. those are very, very tough to do. But, the big things out there are, and what's the reaction to all these moves, right? Well, New Jersey's got to do stuff. What's Toronto going to do? Are they looking at Scott Laughton? Are they willing to pay a price to get Scott Laughton or Braden Shen? Because a lot of the guys they wanted are off the market. They checked in with Yanni Gourde. They checked in with Jake Evans. And now they're gone. So the prices are going up. They've checked in with Mikko Rantanen in Carolina. But again, they want to guarantee that he'd be signing an extension. And if he did go there, that could be the end of Mitch Marner in Toronto. Just being honest, right? And they wanted Matthew Knies. So that's the type of price that a team is looking at to trade to get Mikko Rantanen. So you look at it and you say, well, what could happen? There could be some blockbusters out there. There's some trades out there that we don't see coming, right? We know the Devils, they've checked in on a lot of teams, but are the prices just too high for them? And what do they believe they really are this year? Because they still want to make the playoffs. It's the end goal. They can't take the season. So, and that would be a wrong message, and Tom Fitzgerald could potentially lose his job because of it. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the trust in ownership would go the other way. Yeah, your best player's injured, but you can't rely on one guy. This has to be a team effort. There's a lot of things out there that could potentially be, again, I think there's a lot of dominoes ready to fall, and teams have been pivoting, like we saw with Minnesota and Gustav Nyquist, Stadium Series that weekend, because I think they were a team on Brock Nelson, but they pivoted. Like, what are teams going to do now that players are off the board and the chess pieces have to move? And that's the biggest thing. What domino effect have things that have already occurred make happen now for teams? And what kind of deals could be out there? Could we see a Casey Middlestat, Bo Byram type deal, a hockey trade? Could we see a Thomas Hertl deal that we don't see coming? Again, Vancouver clears $3.25 million in cap space. Feels like they're looking to do something. Kind of a weird trade with Pittsburgh, Tommy Novak, Luke Shen for Michael Bunting. What are teams doing? Will the Capitals try to add something? Will Winnipeg Jets look to do something? Just a lot of puzzle pieces ready to move. Teams are very quiet, like Dallas. What could they do? They got money. New Jersey's being active. So the trade deadline, Friday, March 7th. Again, big things out there. Looking at Vancouver, what they're doing. Looking at what New Jersey's doing. Mikko Rantanen's out there. Everything hinges on what the Islanders do with Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri, because if those guys move, there could be an instant domino effect. And if they don't move, there's still that domino effect. So this has been Jim Biringer here, NHLRumors.com. Check out the videos prior on the page. Subscribe, notify. Stay tuned with NHLRumors.com. Again, like the video. Trade deadline is here, Friday, March 7th. We'll be back again real soon. Take care.